finally, the moment we've been waiting for. After 35 chapters, God is finally going to show up and start answering some questions. Or at least that's what we thought he would do. It turns out he likes to be the one asking the questions. Check it out. Chapter 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Who is this who darkens counsel with words without knowledge? Dress for action like a man. I will question you, and you make it known to me." Okay, I don't know what it was like, but I mean, it had to have been intense, right? Anyways, God's intense speech follows a similar pattern as the prologue. Now, you remember the prologue had two panels, right? These kind of literary panels that had the exact same words in section 1 and section 2. Same deal is going to be going on here in God's speech. Let me show you them side by side. Now, I'm not going to read it in the same way, but look at this. It's the same words here in panel 2 in chapter 40. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Hey, dress for action like a man. I will question you. You make it known to me." And then some kind of initial challenge question. Who darkens counsel? And would you put me in the wrong? Would you condemn me so that you would be in the right? Yeah, that doesn't sound like a very good idea. Well, after this initial challenge, God is going to start asking his questions. And his questions are going to come in two parts as well. So the first part, in 38 and 39, there's going to be a tour of the cosmos, the skies, creation. And then he's going to move to a virtual safari, looking at all these animals and what their lives are like. So that's kind of round 1. Round 2 has two parts as well. The first part focuses on the mighty behemoth, and then the second part on the Leviathan in chapter 41, these monstrous beasts that God is very proud of. Well, can you hear it? There's a tour bus arriving to cruise the cosmos. Let's quick jump on board. That was a little bit corny. Okay, the cosmos. Let me move this around here. All right. "Where were you," God asks Job, "when I laid the foundation of the earth? Who determines its measurements? Surely you know, Job. You're so wise, aren't you? Who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk?" God is just going to assault Job with a barrage of questions, all highlighting Job's absence at creation. He wasn't there. And then he's going to move on from that to demonstrate how he preserves and sustains and governs creation in an ongoing way. Look at verse 12. And all this has to do with like the heavens above. "Have you, Job, commanded the morning since the days begin?" Did you make the sun rise this morning? Was that you or was that me? I kind of forgot. Let's see. "Do you know the way into the dwelling of light? Have you entered the storehouses of snow and hail and light and wind and rain and the thunderbolt? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds that a flood of waters may come down and cover you? Can you command the lightning and say, hey, go there, go there, go there?" Well, he's going to move on from here at the end of chapter 38 to his virtual safari. And he's going to ask, hey, do you provide food for the lion and the raven? Do you watch the mountain goats or the does give birth and keep track of their months as they progress through their pregnancy? Are you the one who makes the ox, the wild donkey wild? Did you infuse that into its personality, into its character? Do you make the wild ox strong? Do you make the ostrich foolish? Do you make the horse mighty? You know what, Job? The universe is infinitely more complex than you ever thought to imagine. You thought that you knew how I should run the universe. The thing is, you don't have a clue. However, I I have my eye on every detail of creation. Now, where does that leave Job, and where does that leave us? Well, God is going to appeal to his wisdom in order to defend his justice, and we have a choice to make. We can choose to trust that wisdom and trust the goodness of God. He's in control of everything, and he knows what he's doing. Well, God is not done yet. He has two giant monsters that he just can't wait to show off to Job as well. Behold, Behemoth! Down in chapter 40, verse 15, behold the mighty behemoth. Now, this word behemoth, behemoth, actually, kind of oddly enough, it's the same word that's used to talk about a cow or an ox, but this guy, he is no cow and he is no ox. His tail is stiff like a cedar. His bones are like bronze. Man can't get close to this guy with either a sword or with a snare. Now, we don't know exactly what animal God is talking about when he's raving about the behemoth. Now, some people say it's a hippo, but I don't know about you. I've never seen a hippo with a tail like a cedar, so I'm just saying. It's probably some animal that is now extinct. Well, God is going to devote a full chapter, chapter 41, to reveling in the might of the Leviathan. Let's take a look at that speech. Let's see, can you draw out the mighty Leviathan with a fish hook? No way, Jose. Look at his back. Oh, his back, it is made of rows of shields. His neck, oh, let's talk about his neck. There is strength abiding in the Leviathan's neck. His underparts, his belly, well, they're like sharp pot shears. He's wearing armor. And man, evidently, I don't know how this works, this guy breathes fire. His sneezes flash forth light. Out of his mouth goes flaming torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. Now, in Psalm 74, the psalmist is going to talk about this guy too, the Leviathan. And what he does there in Psalm 74 is he's going to adapt Canaanite mythology in order to portray God as the one who slayed the seven-headed sea monster, the chaos monster, and through that act brought about the order of creation. Now, if the psalmist can use poetic license and use some Canaanite mythology in his poem, so can the author of Job here in chapter 41 to make his point, which happens to be in verse 10. Look at this. Verse 10. No one is so fierce to stir up the Leviathan. Who then is he who can stand before me? God says. Not only is the universe infinitely complex, it also doesn't fit my neat categories of good and evil. Because I, or say Job, I look at a thing like that, the Leviathan, and I'm like, that is definitely evil. But that's not what God thinks. God is clearly proud of this monstrous, fire-breathing sea monster. Such a creature exists in God's good world, a world that is ordered and infused with chokmah. And yet there are still wild and chaotic and unpredictable elements in it. Now, the whole sequence of God's speeches here in 38 and 41, they're designed to demonstrate the vast distance between God and us. And they make this point through these rhetorical questions, right? Where were you when I made the world? Do you know what the horse is all about? Can you tame these monstrous beasts? Well, the same tactic of these questions is going to be implemented in the very center of the book of Job, a poem about wisdom, which might be considered the thesis of the entire book. Now, this chapter, chapter 28, it stands apart from the dialogue before it and the monologues after it. And let me show you kind of how this works. Why chapter 28 stands apart from what is before it. So let's just look at the beginning of these chapters. Chapter 25, Bildad is speaking. 26, Job answers. 27, Job, look at this, again took up his discourse. This is his closing statement, the final chapter in the dialogues. But you look at 28, nothing, no introduction. Go to 29, well, there's an introduction again. Job again took up his discourse and said, well, that's a little weird. 28 then seems to stand apart. And it doesn't flow naturally from 27. That is certainly true. If you look at the content of 27 and 29, it is completely different in tone and voice and subject. Let me show you. How does chapter 28 read? Let's get into this thing. Surely there is a mine for silver, a place for gold that they refine. Iron is taken out of the earth and copper is smelted from the ore. Where does this come from? This is totally out of nowhere. Now we're talking about how man gets treasures out of the earth. Well, let's keep reading. As man is digging deep underground for these treasures, birds are flying up above their mine, and they have no idea. They can't see. The lion, he's not capable of doing what man is doing, pulling out this treasures from the rock. Man, he channels makes channels in the rock. In his eyes, he sees every precious thing, and he dams up the stream so that the hidden thing he brings out to the light. Now, man's pretty amazing, isn't he? What man is capable of, how he can find things that are hidden and utilize them. He can do things which God's mightiest creatures, the eagle and the lion, they haven't even ever thought to attempt. Well, right when you thought that man was capable of anything, in verse 12, the poem shifts. Look at the shift in verse 12. Oh man, he can do everything. Look what he can do. He can get out all these treasures. But where shall wisdom be found? Where is wisdom? The deep says, hey, it's not in me. The sea says, yeah, I haven't seen wisdom. Wisdom is worth far more than any of the treasures that man can pull out of the earth. You see, wisdom is hidden. It is concealed, certainly from the birds of the air. Where is wisdom? God knows. God understands the way to it. He knows its place. And then what does God say? He's going to start to tell man. He's going to reveal it to him. God said to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And to turn away from evil, that is understanding. You see, there's a kind of wisdom that we humans can tap into, the Proverbs kind of wisdom, where we fear God. We fear God, and then things go well for us. That is a kind of creaturely wisdom. But there's another kind of wisdom, a wisdom that is inaccessible to us as humans, a divine wisdom. And this chapter, this poem, chapter 28, it serves as a commentary on the failure of these dialogues with Job and his friends. You see, Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, they are like copper miners. See, here they are again, going into the mine. They're looking for divine wisdom. They got their pickaxe over their shoulder, and they're like, where's divine wisdom? How does God run the universe? I'm going to find it. But remember, the deep said, wisdom, it's not here. It's not in me. Man cannot find it. You see, the just and the orderly world, which the book of Proverbs portrays, and which the friends believe in with their very strict theology, that is generally true, but not always. And the kind of wisdom required to explain all those instances where the book of Proverbs didn't work out, that kind of wisdom is inaccessible for us as humans. And the wisdom that is left for us is to simply humble ourselves and to trust that God is good. Now, in our final lecture, we are going to witness a transformed Job who is humbled and at peace with his creatureliness.